Well, Mr. Wilson, you have an opportunity, just like during any of the other phases of, well, let me just finish real quick. Any other phases during the case, if you want to address the court, I would permit you to do that. Obviously, everything's recorded, but you would have that opportunity if you wish. No one can prevent you from addressing the court if you wish to, and no one can make you address the court if you don't want to. So it is a decision that's solely left up to you if you want to address the court or not.
Not today. Later, when I come back, I will. Today, okay. No, I won't.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
On August 27th, 2024, Fort Myers, Florida. While families of his victims sob in the gallery, Wade Wilson, convicted of murdering 2 women, looks through the side of his eyes and smirks. Swastikas cover his face. Bread for war stretches across his cheek. Throughout his trial, he smiled. He yawned. He treated a double murder case like entertainment. He thought he was untouchable, invincible, a celebrity. Then his father took the stand. This is the story of Wade Wilson, a monster who believed in his own myth, the 2 innocent women whose lives he stole, and the moment in a courtroom when accountability came from the most unexpected source. October 7th, 2019. Cape Coral, Florida. A quiet Monday that would become one of the darkest days in this Gulf Coast community's history. By the time the sun set, 2 women would be dead, and the man responsible would be just getting started. Wade Stephen Wilson was 25 years old. He had a history of drug abuse, petty crimes, and violence. He'd been in and out of the criminal justice system, but nothing in his record prepared anyone for what he was about to do. The night of October 6th, Wilson went to Buddha Live, a sports bar in Cape Coral. It was there he met Christine Melton. She was 35 years old, a mother, known to friends and family as kind and trusting. She worked hard, lived alone, and on this particular night, she made a decision that would cost her everything. She invited Wade Wilson back to her home. We don't know exactly what happened in those early morning hours of October 7th. What we do know is this. While Christine Melton slept in her own bed, in her own home, Wade Wilson strangled her to death. She never had a chance to fight back. Never had a chance to call for help. The man she'd shown kindness to, offered hospitality to, killed her while she was at her most vulnerable. And then Wade Wilson stole her car and drove away. But he wasn't done. Hours later, around 6:30 in the morning, a woman named Diane Ruiz was walking in Cape Coral. She was 43 years old, a mother, a grandmother, a hard-working woman who was simply trying to get to work. When Wade Wilson, driving Christine Melton's stolen vehicle, pulled up and asked her for directions, Diane did what most of us would do. She tried to help. That moment of kindness, that simple human impulse to help a stranger, was the last decision Diane Ruiz would ever make. Wilson attacked her. He strangled her, just as he had strangled Christine Melton hours before. But with Diane Ruiz, he went further. After killing her, Wilson ran over her body with the car. Not once, multiple times. He drove back and forth over her, crushing her remains, ensuring there would be no chance of survival, no chance of identification, no dignity even in death. He then dumped her body in a field behind a Sam's Club on Diplomat Parkway, left her there like garbage, and drove away in Christine Melton's car, going about his day as if nothing had happened. 2 women, 2 separate encounters, 2 brutal murders, all within hours of each other, all by the same man, all for no reason beyond opportunity and the impulse to kill.
Miss Ruiz and Miss Melton had 3 things in common. Both of them died on the 7th of October of 2019. Both of them...
October 8th, 2019, the day after the murders. Christine Melton's friends became concerned when she didn't show up for work and didn't answer her phone. Someone went to check on her. What they found inside her home would haunt them forever. Christine Melton was dead, and her car was missing. That same day, Diane Ruiz's family filed a missing person report. She hadn't come home from work. She wasn't answering her phone. In a city like Cape Coral, this wasn't normal. People started searching. Meanwhile, Wade Wilson was still out there. still driving Christine Melton's stolen Honda, still free. And on the evening of October 8th, he tried to break into a home in Cape Coral. The homeowner called 911, and when police arrived, they found Wilson trying to force his way inside. He was arrested.
Hey, Sarge? Sarge? Okay, who's meeting with here, brother? Who, yeah, no, I know. Who's meeting with him? Who's in charge? You know?
At the time, officers didn't know they had just captured a double murderer. They thought they had a car thief and a burglar. But as the investigation unfolded, as detectives started connecting the pieces, the horrifying truth emerged.
I was thinking I was going to go somewhere else. Not sure what triggered me.
Body camera footage from Wilson's arrest shows a man who is calm, almost amused. When questioned, he's evasive, theatrical even. This isn't a man in shock or panicking. This is someone who thinks he's smarter than everyone around him. In the interrogation room, detectives pressed Wilson about Christine Melton's car, about where he'd been, about what he'd done. And slowly, through hours of questioning, Wade Wilson began to talk.
I think he's got tattoos.
What's up, man?
We were talking about tattoos.
Oh, okay. You got any, man?
I don't. No, we're talking about his.
He doesn't have any either.
I have none.
He admitted to being at Christine Melton's house. He admitted to taking her car. And eventually, he admitted to killing her. The way he described it was chilling. Matter of fact, detached, as if he were recounting a trip to the grocery store rather than the murder of an innocent woman. He claimed he was high on methamphetamine, that he didn't remember all the details, that it just happened. But then came the second confession. Wilson admitted to encountering Diane Ruiz, admitted to strangling her, admitted to running over her body multiple times. He described it with the same disturbing calm, the same lack of emotion, the same absence of anything resembling remorse or humanity. On October 11th, 3 days after Diane Ruiz disappeared, workers behind the Sam's Club on Diplomat Parkway discovered her body. The condition she was found in confirmed what Wilson had described. She had been strangled. She had been run over repeatedly. The brutality was beyond comprehension. The evidence was overwhelming. Cell phone records placed Wilson at both crime scenes. Forensic evidence tied him to both women. Witness statements corroborated the timeline. Christine Melton's stolen car was the murder weapon used on Diane Ruiz, and Wilson himself had confessed to both murders. Wade Wilson was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, grand theft auto, burglary, battery, and petty theft. The state of Florida announced they would seek the death penalty. Between his arrest in October 2019 and his trial in June 2024, something changed about Wade Wilson. Or rather, he changed himself. Deliberately, dramatically, and disturbingly. When Wilson was first arrested, he had some tattoos, but nothing like what the world would eventually see. During his time in jail awaiting trial, Wilson covered his face and neck in tattoos. Swastikas, the words "Bred for War" in Gothic lettering across his cheek. Demonic imagery, symbols of violence and hate. He transformed himself into a visual representation of a monster. This wasn't self-expression. This was branding. This was Wade Wilson creating an image, crafting a persona. And it worked, in the most disturbing way possible. As photos of Wilson circulated online, something unexpected happened. He gained fans. Women sent love letters. People on social media defended him, claimed he was being judged unfairly, said he was misunderstood. Some of this attention came from his appearance, the tattoos, the jawline, the unfortunate coincidence that he shares a name with the Marvel character Deadpool, whose real name is also Wade Wilson. But much of it came from something darker, a fascination with violence, with transgression, with men who break every rule and show no remorse. Wade Wilson leaned into it. He knew cameras would be in that courtroom. He knew his face would be seen around the world, and he played to that audience. June 2024. Nearly 5 years after the murders of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, Wade Wilson's trial finally began in Lee County Circuit Court. It would last 6 weeks. The evidence would be overwhelming, and Wilson's behavior would shock even seasoned court observers. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. They presented the timeline of October 7, 2019. They showed the jury body camera footage, interrogation videos, forensic evidence, cell phone records. They called witnesses who saw Wilson that day, medical examiners who detailed the causes of death, detectives who investigated the scenes. They presented Wilson's own confession in his own words, describing how he strangled Christine Melton while she slept, how he strangled Diane Ruiz after she tried to help him, how he ran over Diane's body with Christine's stolen car again and again, making sure she was dead. The defense argued that Wilson's childhood was traumatic, that he suffered abuse and neglect, that on the day of the murders, he was high on methamphetamine and not in control of his actions. They presented psychological experts who testified about brain damage, about the effects of drug abuse, about the cycle of violence and trauma. But the evidence was damning, and Wilson's behavior during the trial made the defense's job nearly impossible. Throughout the proceedings, Wilson smirked. He made faces at the cameras positioned in the courtroom. He appeared bored during testimony about his own crimes. When photos of his victims were shown, when their families sobbed in the gallery, Wilson looked unaffected. Sometimes he looked amused. On June 12, 2024, after 6 weeks of testimony and just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty, on all counts. First-degree murder in the death of Christine Melton. First-degree murder in the death of Diane Ruiz. Guilty of grand theft auto, burglary, battery, and petty theft. Wade Wilson showed no reaction. The families of Christine and Diane wept, not with relief, but with the weight of confirmation. The man who took their loved ones would be held accountable, but no verdict could bring back the dead. Now came the sentencing phase. In Florida, when someone is convicted of first-degree murder, a separate proceeding determines whether they receive life in prison or the death penalty. The same jury that convicted Wilson would now decide whether he should live or die. This is where the story takes its most emotional turn, because in order to decide Wilson's fate, the court needed to hear from everyone affected by his crimes. And what happened next would become one of the most powerful moments in recent courtroom history. August 2024. The sentencing hearing. This is when the families of victims are allowed to address the court, to speak directly about the impact of the crime, to put a human face on the loss. It's often the most emotional part of any trial, and in the case of Wade Wilson, it would be excruciating. Christine Melton's family took the stand first. Her son spoke about losing his mother, about the hole in his life that would never be filled, about the trauma of knowing how she died, about the man who betrayed her trust in the worst possible way. He described Christine as kind, hard-working, someone who always saw the best in people. That kindness, he said, is what killed her. Friends of Christine spoke about her warmth, her generosity, the way she lit up a room. They spoke directly to Wilson, telling him what he'd taken from the world, telling him that Christine mattered, that her life had value, that she deserved better than to die alone in her own bed at the hands of a stranger she'd tried to help.
Got drinks at other bars. We talked to the people that were there. Pretty standard going out night.
Now, did you, obviously you're drinking and listening to music this entire time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had been drinking pretty heavily that night.
And is that why you chose to get an Uber?
Yes, yeah, we both knew we were going to be drinking, so we didn't want to be driving at all.
Now, while you were there, did someone approach you?
Wade Wilson sat at the defense table looking bored. At one point, he appeared to yawn. At another, he smirked. Then came Diane Ruiz's family. Her father, Felix Ruiz, approached the stand. He was elderly, moving slowly, his grief visible in every step. He spoke about his daughter, about Diane as a little girl, as a mother, as a grandmother. He spoke about the 3 days she was missing, about the hope that maybe, somehow, she was still alive. and then about the moment they found her body.
Yes. My name is Felix Ruiz, the father of Diane. I didn't get to say I love her and I miss her. But I also like to thank the state attorney and all the law enforcement involved in this case to make this day become the reality of today. I'd like to know that this is not the end. The end is when the accused takes his last breath, and I will be there at the execution. And that's a promise. Thank you.
About what Wade Wilson had done to her. Diane's children spoke. Her friends spoke. They described a woman who worked hard, who loved her family, who was just trying to get to work on an ordinary Monday morning when Wade Wilson took everything from her.
Telling them your name.
I'm Zane Romero.
Do you know, or did you know a young lady by the name of Diane Ruiz?
Yes, that was my mom.
And is there anything that you would like for the jury to consider here today as it relates to this matter?
I wrote a letter.
Will you please be so kind?
My name is Zane Romero. I'm a 19-year-old college student going for my bachelor degree in graphic design. I'm Diane Ruiz's youngest child. I was only 14 years old when she passed. Just starting my freshman year of high school, she was so excited to see me grow up.
They described the brutality of her death, not to be gratuitous, but to make the court understand the suffering, the cruelty, the absolute absence of mercy. Through all of this, Wade Wilson sat unmoved. He examined his fingernails. He looked at the cameras. At one point, he winked. The courtroom was filled with raw grief, with righteous anger, with families begging for justice. And the man responsible treated it like a show. The prosecution argued for the death penalty. They outlined the aggravating factors, that the murders were heinous, atrocious, and cruel.
While that was happening, law enforcement is conducting an investigation. They knew who he was. They were researching, trying to figure out who his next point of contact would be. They'd already reached out to his dad. They needed to know where his whereabouts are. Dad tells them, you know, he's conflicted. It's his son, right?
That they were cold, calculated, and premeditated. That Wilson murdered 2 people in a single day, showing a pattern and a complete disregard for human life. That he had shown absolutely no remorse. That he posed a continuing threat to society. The defense argued for life in prison, without parole. They brought back the narrative of Wilson's traumatic childhood, his drug abuse, his age at the time of the murders. They argued that death was too extreme, that life in prison would be sufficient punishment. And then, at the very end of the sentencing hearing, one final witness was called to the stand. Stephen Testaseca, Wade Wilson's biological father. The courtroom shifted when Stephen Testaseca walked to the witness stand. This was a man who had been largely absent from Wade Wilson's life. He'd surrendered his parental rights when Wade was young, leaving him to be raised in what would become a chaotic, abusive environment. For years, Testaseca hadn't been part of Wade's story. But now, with his son facing a death sentence for murdering 2 innocent women, Stephen Testaseca came forward. And what he said shocked everyone in that courtroom. He started by turning to the families of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, and he apologized, not on behalf of Wade, but for himself, for his own failure. He told them that he understood their pain, their anger, their loss. He told them that he had failed his son, failed to be there, failed to protect him, failed to give him the guidance and stability every child needs. He said that because he had failed Wade, their loved ones were gone. His voice broke as he spoke. This wasn't a man making excuses. This was a man taking accountability for something that happened decades ago, but had led inevitably to this moment.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
Stephen Testaseca.
Mr. Testaseca, where are you employed?
I'm self-employed.
What type of work do you do?
Window and door replacement.
Are you married?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your wife's name?
Melanie.
Do you live in Fort Myers?
No, ma'am.
What city do you live in?
Lakeland.
About how far is Lakeland from Fort Myers?
2 hours.
Testaseca described Wade's childhood, the abuse, the neglect, the instability. He talked about Wade's mother's drug addiction, about the revolving door of homes and caregivers, about a little boy who never had a chance to feel safe or loved. He admitted that he should have fought harder, should have been there, should have been a father. I should have been there, he said. I should have fought harder. He needed a father, and I wasn't one. And then he said something that cut to the core of everything. These families lost everything because I failed at the one job I had. Testaseca then asked the court for mercy, not for Wade's sake, but in acknowledgement of the family's loss and the complexity of how a child becomes a monster. He said he understood if the court decided Wade deserved the death penalty. He wasn't arguing his son was innocent or redeemable. He was simply saying, I am responsible too. And for the first time in the entire trial, Wade Wilson's mask slipped. His head dropped. His jaw tightened. Witnesses in the courtroom said he appeared to be fighting back emotion. The man who had smirked through victim impact statements, who had winked at cameras, who had treated the murders of 2 women like performance art. This man seemed, for just a moment, to feel something. It didn't last long. But in that moment, the courtroom saw something true. A son hearing his father take responsibility for failing him. A son confronted with the reality that his life could have been different. That the cycle of violence and neglect that created him wasn't inevitable. It was a choice made by people who should have done better. But it was too late. The damage was done. 2 women were dead, and Wade Wilson had made his own choices. Choices that went far beyond any trauma or abandonment he experienced as a child. The families of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz watched this moment with complicated emotions. Some wept. Some looked angry. Some looked exhausted. Because while Stephen Testaseca's testimony was powerful, while it offered a glimpse into how Wade Wilson became what he became, it didn't change the fact that their loved ones were gone. It didn't bring back Christine or Diane. It didn't erase the horror of how they died.
Did you have any idea at that point of what had happened?
No, ma'am.
Did the detective want you to try to help them get in touch with your son?
She just gave me a number and said if he calls you back, we need to talk to him.
Okay. Now, did he end up calling you later that evening?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did he tell you in that call that evening?
August 27th, 2024. Judge Nicholas Thompson took the bench to deliver Wade Wilson's sentence. The courtroom was packed. The families of the victims were there. Wade Wilson sat at the defense table, his tattooed face expressionless, the mask back in place. Judge Thompson reviewed the case. He acknowledged the defense's arguments about Wilson's difficult childhood, his drug abuse, his age at the time of the crimes. He acknowledged Stephen Testaseca's testimony and the complicated question of how trauma shapes a person. But then he reviewed the evidence. The brutality of the murders. The fact that Wilson killed 2 women in one day. The fact that he strangled them both with his bare hands. The fact that he ran over Diane Ruiz's body repeatedly, showing a level of cruelty that defied comprehension. The fact that throughout the entire trial, he showed no remorse, only contempt. Judge Thompson concluded that the aggravating factors far outweighed any mitigating circumstances. The murders were heinous, atrocious, and cruel.
Convictions and sentences are subject to automatic review by the Florida Supreme Court. If he cannot afford an attorney to represent him in any appeal, the court will appoint one for him. Are there any other matters to present cases pending here in this circuit? Today is not the day to handle those. I would maybe put those, I could do it as early as September 16th. believe that's Monday morning, 16th then at 9 a.m. for the other cases, which are case numbers.
20 CF 16.
They were cold, calculated, and premeditated. Wade Wilson posed a continuing threat to society, and he had shown repeatedly that he felt no empathy, no guilt, no humanity. The sentence: death. For the murder of Christine Melton. Death. For the murder of Diane Ruiz. Wade Wilson would be sentenced to death twice, once for each woman he killed. Wilson's reaction was minimal. A slight nod. The smirk returned briefly. He looked at the cameras one more time. Even in this moment, the moment he was sentenced to die, he couldn't let go of the performance. The families of Christine and Diane had mixed reactions. Some felt relief that justice had been served. Others felt empty, because no sentence could bring back the women they loved. The death penalty might offer a sense of finality, but it couldn't undo the trauma, couldn't fill the void, couldn't answer the question that haunts every family of a murder victim. Why? As of today, Wade Wilson sits on death row in Florida. His case will go through the automatic appeals process that follows every death sentence. It could be years, even decades, before the sentence is carried out, if it ever is. Florida has executed inmates before, but the process is long, and many death sentences are eventually commuted to life in prison.
In evaluating the aggravating and mitigating factors, the court does not engage in a mere counting procedure, but instead makes a reasoned judgment based on the totality of the circumstances. In reaching this decision, the court is mindful that because death is a unique punishment in its finality, its application is reserved only for those cases where the most aggravating and least mitigating circumstances exist. The law never requires the imposition of a death sentence.
Wilson's case generated enormous media attention, not just because of the brutality of his crimes, but because of his appearance, his courtroom behavior, and the disturbing phenomenon of people online who romanticized him. True crime communities debated whether his childhood trauma excused his actions. Social media platforms had to remove fan pages dedicated to him. Letters continued to pour into the prison where he's held. All of this attention obscures what should be the center of this story: Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. Christine Melton was 35 years old when she died. She was a mother. She was kind. She trusted people. On October 6, 2019, she invited a stranger into her home, and that stranger killed her. Her family will never get to hear her voice again, never get to hug her, never get to tell her they love her. Every holiday, every birthday, every milestone, Christine won't be there. Diane Ruiz was 43 years old when she died. She was a mother and a grandmother. She worked hard to support her family. On October 7, 2019, she tried to help a stranger who asked for directions, and that stranger killed her in one of the most brutal ways imaginable. Her grandchildren will grow up without her. Her father will carry the grief of outliving his daughter for the rest of his life. These are the victims. These are the lives that mattered. Not Wade Wilson's tattoos, not his smirk, not his performance. Christine and Diane. Stephen Testaseca's testimony raised uncomfortable questions that our society struggles with. How much does childhood trauma explain adult violence? Where is the line between understanding the origins of a monster and excusing what that monster does? Can we hold someone accountable for their crimes while also acknowledging that they were failed by the systems and people who should have protected them? Testaseca's apology was powerful because it was rare.
I was going to send him an Uber, and I needed the address of where he was.
Were you actually going to send him an Uber?
No, ma'am.
And so when you told him that you were going to send him an Uber, did he give you that address?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you then do with the address he gave you?
My wife was messaging with the officer.
We almost never see that level of accountability from a parent in cases like this. Most families of killers stay silent, or defend their loved ones, or deny reality. Testaseca did none of those things. He looked at the families of his son's victims and said, "I am responsible too, but here's the truth. Stephen Testaseca's failure as a father doesn't absolve Wade Wilson of his crimes. Understanding how someone becomes a killer doesn't mean they shouldn't be held accountable for killing. Trauma explains behavior. It doesn't excuse it.
It is my task to describe this beautiful human and to somehow capture Christine in a way that 12 strangers and 2 alternates can understand, using only my words. And I will do so sitting no more than 20 feet from the convicted, who beat Christine, murdered Christine, and threw her away like garbage. I hope you will understand this is not the ideal scenario to be sharing personal stories, although you would have loved them.
Wade Wilson had a terrible childhood. He was failed by his parents, by the system, by nearly every adult who should have protected him. That's a tragedy. But Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz didn't fail Wade Wilson. They didn't abuse him or neglect him. They simply existed in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he chose to kill them. That choice, that decision to strangle 2 women with his bare hands, to run over one of their bodies repeatedly, to show no mercy and no remorse, that belongs to Wade Wilson alone. In the end, what do we take from this case? That evil exists. That some people, whether through nature or nurture or some combination of both, become capable of horrific violence. That our criminal justice system, imperfect as it is, sometimes gets it right. That a jury of 12 people looked at all the evidence, heard all the testimony, and decided that Wade Wilson deserved the ultimate punishment. And that sometimes, in the darkest moments, accountability comes from unexpected places. A father who failed his son decades ago stood in front of the world and admitted it. He didn't make excuses. He didn't ask for forgiveness for himself. He simply acknowledged his role in creating the conditions that allowed a monster to grow. It was too late for Wade Wilson. It was far too late for Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. But maybe, somewhere, someone listening to this story will understand the weight of their responsibility to the children in their lives. Maybe they'll fight harder, be more present, break the cycle. Maybe Stephen Testaseca's testimony, as painful as it was, will prevent even one future tragedy. That would be something. Not redemption, not forgiveness, but something. Wade Wilson thought he was untouchable, thought he was invincible, thought the courtroom was his stage and the world was his audience. But in the end, he was just another killer. Just another man who chose violence and cruelty and called it power. And Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, they were so much more than his victims. They were mothers, daughters, friends. They were people with dreams and fears and love in their hearts. They mattered. They still matter. Their names deserve to be remembered long after Wade Wilson's tattoos fade and his smirk is forgotten. Christine Melton, Diane Ruiz. Say their names. Say,